Joy Cariño.
It Isn't Me by James Lasdun. It isn't me, he'd say, stepping out of a landscape that offered, he'd thought, the backdrop to a plausible existence until he entered it. It's just not me, he'd murmur, walking away. It's not quite me, he'd explain, apologetic but firm, leaving some job they'd found him. They found him others. He'd go, smiling his smile, putting his best foot forward, till again, he'd find himself reluctantly concluding that this, too, wasn't him. He wanted to get married, make a home, unfold a life among his neighbors' lives, branching and blossoming like a tree. But when it came to it, "It isn't me," was all he seemed to learn from all his diligent forays outward. And why it should be so hard for someone not so different from themselves to find what they'd found, barely even seeking. What gift he'd not been given, what forlorn charm of his they'd had the luck to lack puzzled them, though not unduly. They lived inside their lives so fully they couldn't, in the end, believe in him, except as some half-legendary figure destined or doomed to carry on his back the weight of their own all but weightless stray doubts and discomforts. Only sometimes, alone in offices or living rooms, they'd hear that phrase again, "It isn't me," and wonder briefly what they were and where, and feel the strangeness of being there. To David, About His Education, by Howard Nemerov. The world is full of mostly invisible things, and there is no way but putting the mind's eye, or its nose, in a book to find them out. Things like the square root of Everest, or how many times Byron goes into Texas, or whether the law of the excluded middle applies west of the Rockies. For these and the like reasons, you have to go to school and study books and listen to what you were told and sometimes try to remember. Though I don't know what you will do with the mean annual rainfall on Plato's Republic or the calorie content of the diet of worms. Such things are said to be good for you, and you will have to learn them in order to become one of the grown-ups who sees invisible things, neither steadily nor whole, but keeps gravely the grand confusion of the world under his hat, which is where it belongs, and teaches small children to do this in their turn. In School Days, by John Greenleaf Whittier. Still sits the schoolhouse by the road, a ragged beggar sleeping. Around it still the sumacs grow and blackberry vines are creeping. Within, the master's desk is seen, deep scarred by raps official, the warping floor, the battered seats, the jackknife's carved initial, the charcoal frescoes on its wall, its door's worn sill betraying the feet that, creeping slow to school, went storming out to playing. Long years ago, a winter sun shone over it at setting, lit up its western window panes and low eaves icy fretting. It touched the tangled golden curls and brown eyes full of grieving, of one who still her steps delayed when all the school were leaving, for near her stood the little boy her childish favor singled, his cap pulled low upon a face where pride and shame were mingled. Pushing with restless feet the snow to right and left, he lingered as restlessly her tiny hands the blue checked apron fingered. He saw her lift her eyes. He felt the soft hands light caressing, and heard the tremble of her voice, as if a fault confessing. I'm sorry that I spelled the word I hate to go above you, because the brown eyes lower fell. Because, you see, I love you. Still memory to a gray-haired man that sweet child face is showing. Dear girl, the grasses on her grave have 40 years been growing. He lives to learn in life's hard school how few who pass above him lament their triumph and his loss like her, because they love him.